This is the solution to the first challenge. I think I called it my comic book challenge or something along those lines. What I gave you was the beginning of a project, and it would include the model, and you'd have to create everything else. So here you can see this will be in the zip file, this first challenge. I'm going to extract it and copy it into my Visual Studio 2013 projects folder. I'll just paste it like that, and then we'll go in there and find it. It's called First Challenge, and I will open it up, and there we go. Okay, so as you can see, I have this and nothing else. There's nothing in the controllers. There's no views except the shared stuff. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and create a new controller. So I'm just going to right click and select Add Controller off to the right hand side of the screen. I'll choose an MVC 5 controller empty, and we'll just call this Home Controller. And inside here, what I will do is actually, let's just start by adding a view. So we'll just add a view with that same information. So yeah, index without a model, that's fine. You could choose with a model, but we're not going to do that just yet. Well, yeah, we won't do that yet. And I'll click Add. We'll just add everything in by hand. Okay, so let's get to our comic book manager. You can see that I don't have a using statement for it, so I'm going to hit Control period on my keyboard, and I'll select the using statement, so it'll add that in line number 1 of my code now. And I can get to the get comic books, and it's going to return back a list of comic book. So let's go var comics equals, and then I will pass it into the view because that's one of the overloads, is to use that view method to pass in your model. And I think that's all I really need to do here for this for the index. Let's go over to the index.cshtml. Now the first thing I need to do is to use the model directive in order to say, hey, I'm going to use a list of comic book. Now when I try to do this, obviously it's not going to be able to find my the namespace because I put it in the models folder, so I'm going to need to just hit Control period on my keyboard, and we'll add in the full namespace for the comic book class. So we're off to a good start. I'm going to set the title. I didn't really reference this, but just for the sake of completion, I'm going to put it as My Comics. And we'll change this out to My Comics. And now I know I'm getting in a list of comic book, and so this is where really the magic comes in. So I'm going to go for each tab, and I'll call this comic in model. And then inside here, I guess since I started with an H2 there, I'll use an H3 here. And this is where I'm going to put the title of the comic and the anchor tag to actually go to the detail. I know I'm going to use comic dot, and it looks like I lost my IntelliSense here, so let's just do it from memory here, comic title. And I know that I'm going to create a hyperlink. Now I could hard code it like we talked about before, or I can use one of these helper methods, action link. There we go. Oh, I lost it because I didn't switch over to the Razor syntax. There we go. Now we got it. And so I'm going to use as the link text the actual name of the comic book, so that'll give us the title of the comic book there. And then I need an action name. We're going to call this action detail. We'll add that next here. And finally, I need to tell it which comic book that I want to load in the detail. So I'm going to need to set that in the route value dictionary, this third parameter to this action link method. And so we'll just do this. I'm going to create a new route value and set the ID equal to the comic book ID. So that should give us the /detail/home/1 URL, for example. And then the next thing we'll need to do is to put the episode number. So we'll go comic, and I guess I'll need razor syntax so I can get to the comics episode number. And then we'll do a dash in the comic episode title. Okay, so far so good. And then below that you'll remember that I did the list of characters. So there will be something like, and we'll do strong and starring. And then I'm gonna, after that, I'm gonna put here the list of the characters that were being used. So how do I go about doing this? That's pretty tricky stuff. So we'll go var characters equals comic.characters. Now it'll give me all of them back. Now you recall I said that I really didn't want you to use the for each loop. What I really wanted you to use was the string.join, because if you look at the IntelliSense for this, it will concatenate elements of a string array using a specified separator. So we can, if we give it an array of items, in this case character names, and we say separate them each by a comma, then we won't have that issue of a trailing comma between or at the very end of a list. If you were to use a for loop, that's what you're going to get. Plus this is a lot cleaner and quicker. So ideally what I'd like to do is grab out these characters and have this become an array of strings. So to do that, all I really want, I don't want the ID, I just want the name itself in the array. So I'm going to have to just project out using the select method the name, and then I'm going to call toArray on it like that. So now I have an array of strings with only the names of the comic book characters in there. Now I can go here to string.join, and I'll just do this var characters string. This will be the output, and what I'll pass it is that the separator, I just want to use a comma space, and then I'm going to give it the values. Looks like I can give it any array as long as it's a type object. So I can give the characters array like that. Then finally what I will do is just add the character string like that. That should work. Now I've written a lot of code and haven't tested it, so I guess the first order of business here is to make sure this even works. And looks like we have success here. Now when I click on the link, it looks like the URL is correct at the bottom, so /home/detail/1, but if I go there I'm going to get a 404. So let's go ahead and fix that problem. Let's go back in the home controller, and this time what I want to do is go public action result and then index, and I'll pass in a int ID. That's what I would expect to be passed to this method. Whoops, not index, this should be detail. I apologize. There we go. And what we'll return is we're going to return something. I'm not quite sure what we're going to pass out just yet. It'll probably be honestly one comic book. Keep in mind that ID will be passed in as a result of being the third segment in the route. I guess the first order of details kind of start and do what we did here just to get a list of the comic books. Now that I have the list of comics, I can grab out one comic. So var comic, whoops, comic equals comics, and what I want to do is find the comic that has the ID that was passed in. So let's go first or default, and then I'll use a link statement here and go give me just the first one or null where the comic book ID is equal to that ID that was passed into the method. Alright, so now that I have the comic that I'm looking for, I should be able to pass that in, and that'll become the model for the strongly typed view that we'll create. And speaking of which, let's go ahead and create that. I'm just going to right click in the body of that method and select add view, and I'm not going to change anything here. I'll just click add. Alright, and so here what we'll do is let's add the model directive, and I know it's just I wanted to type comic book. It'll just be one instance of comic book. Now obviously I don't have the proper name using statements, so I'm going to add entire namespace chain to get that to work. Okay. In the title here, I didn't talk about this, but what I'm going to do is actually do this. Var title equals string.format, and we'll give it, call it details about, and then we'll give it the title of the comic book, and then the episode number, like so. So I'll just do model. Remember, I'm using capital M to access the model, and we'll go comic title. We'll go model dot episode number, and that should be all we need to do to get a proper title, and then we'll just replace that here. Furthermore, we're going to use it as the title on the page itself, not just on the tab. All right, so we're floating along pretty good here. The next thing we're going to need to do is to type in the episode title, like that. And that should be easy to get to because I'll just go model.episode title, like that. Now the next thing I need to do is show that list of all of the comics, or all of the characters that are here. Now I could go back here in the index and see how I did it here. And I think pretty much that's going to work. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here, like so. But there's an obvious problem here that I can't just do that, can I? Nope, that doesn't work. Actually, what I'm going to need to do is create a block like that. And then I can stick all this inside of that. And that should work. Sweet. Actually, it won't, because I'll need to go model.comic. Or actually, it's just a model. There we go. Now that should work. Okay. Then there was a horizontal rule, if you notice that. And finally, I'm going to need to link back to the index page. So here again, I'm going to go html.actionLink. Yeah, I could just hard code this as an anchor tag, but I'm wanting to do this the MVC way. And then the action name is just going to be index. Like so. Let's see if that works. Alright, it doesn't work, and why not? Well, it's because I have the view open. Let's shut all that down. And now it works. Okay, so nothing changed here. Let's take a look at Action Comics, details about Action Comics 41, episode title, Not So Superman, starring Superman. Whoops, you see one little bug here? I accidentally added a semicolon. Habits are hard to break. In fact, I think this was pretty much copy and paste issue, wasn't it? So let's go here. And in the detail. Oh yeah, right there. Okay. Let's run that again. Whoops, I'm going to get the same issue again. Okay, and that looks right. Let's go back and look at the results of the Batman Superman. Yep, that looks right too. Okay, so hopefully you got that, and if not, set it aside and do it later today or do it tomorrow again. Just make sure that you get the whole process of how to create controllers, how to create views, what are the necessary components of it in order to get the model injected into that view, and you should be good to continue on. All right, great. See you in the next video. Thanks.